A very good evening and welcome to State of Business, our television's primetime business news bulletin. I'm Madhusha Palakumar. Let's take a look at the headlines first. First National Symposium on Data for SDGs initiated in Sri Lanka. Development process of Sri Lanka's National Financial Inclusion Strategy launched by CBSL. Now the stories in detail. Sri Lanka's first National Symposium on Data for Sustainable Development Goals was initiated in Battaramulla today. The symposium was jointly organized by the Government of Sri Lanka and the United Nations.
The two-day symposium on Data for Sustainable Development Goals is a platform for enhancing the use of data towards evidence-based policymaking and coordination of monitoring the progress on SDGs in Sri Lanka. During the meeting, 10 sessions will be conducted by 24 esteemed local and international resource persons who will discuss the three main points of impact and importance of data, context and challenges of SDG data in Sri Lanka, and strategy and the way forward using data for SDGs. The meeting was inaugurated by Speaker Karu Jayasuriya, Minister of Sustainable Development and Wildlife Ravindra Samaraweera, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament Thilanga Sumathipala, and the UN Resident Coordinator Simrin Singh. Highlighting the importance of data, the UN Resident Coordinator Simrin Singh expressed the following views.
Without data, we cannot know how many people are born and at what age they might die, how many men, women and children are still living in poverty, how many women and youth are in employment, how many children need education, how many doctors to train, or how many schools to build. Knowing this crucial information is the starting point to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. It helps to drive decisions, to understand where we are now and where we need to be, and most critically, to guide how we need to get there. This National Symposium on Data for SDGs is deeply relevant to our journey towards achieving these ambitious 17 goals.
Meanwhile, speaking at the event, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament and the Chairman of the Parliament Select Committee for the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, Thilanga Sumathipala, stated that the government should mainly focus on setting aside adequate funds from the national budget to deal with issues pertaining to the country.
When the government is saying, look, we would like to by this year, 2020, 2022, 2025, these are our goals, these are our aspirations, this is the planning the government is having. They have to make sure, the government has to make sure, the adequate money has been set aside to deal with that. Education, we've been talking about 6%. Whether 6% of education is being spread properly into respective disciplines and at all levels. And is it the 6% is the right number against the national budget? Based on the data for us to achieve what we want to achieve. So we have done a study with the budget and the SDGs. We wanted to see whether the alignments are right. Even though government is saying the poverty alleviation or whatever proper line of thinking with regard to climatic change or whatever, whether the national budget set aside adequate funds to deal with it over the next 3 years, 5 years for us to bring those numbers down. This exercise will help us. This symposium will give a huge start for us to have our national planning and get the government to be influenced.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka, together with the International Finance Corporation, launched the development process of Sri Lanka's National Financial Inclusion Strategy under the patronage of Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy today. Addressing the media during the launch, the CBSL governor made the following remarks.
The launch was attended by representatives from the ministries, the central bank, government institutions, banks, professional bodies and academia who are part of the consultative process as members of the steering committee and the working groups to be appointed. The launch will be followed by 3 days of deliberations by the working group.
The Central Bank, in consultation with the IFC, has drafted a detailed work plan in formulating this strategy. It expects to implement the strategy by mid-2019. Through formulation and implementation of a national financial inclusion strategy, Sri Lanka is joining over 60 countries that have launched or are in the process of developing such strategies. For successful implementation of this process, high-level political commitment is required. Most of all, active participation and commitment of all stakeholders who have been identified and whose representatives are included in the steering committee and the working committees is essential. A consultative process will be followed, involving all relevant stakeholders from the outset. We need to work together with a clear understanding of our goals, strategies, responsibilities, and most importantly, the challenges we would encounter in formulating this strategy.
Addressing the launch of development process for Sri Lanka's National Financial Inclusion Strategy, Country Manager of International Finance Corporation for Sri Lanka and Maldives, Amina Arif emphasized the need to stabilize the financial sector of Sri Lanka in order to drive the economic growth of the country.
As Sri Lanka looks to grow, a strong and inclusive financial sector is crucial, simply because without that there is no sustainable, continued economic development that is possible. Overall, everything looks good. There's wide access bank accounts, there's good access, physical access to branch locations, ATM networks, etc. We're talking about financial inclusion. Really, the idea is that financial inclusion means having access to appropriate and effective financial services from the formal financial sector. Of course, such services must be provided responsibly and suitably and in a very regulated environment. Small and medium enterprises are the drivers of economic growth. The picture that Sri Lanka presents on the face of it, as I said, it's not a bad story. It is considerably better than what we see in the rest of South Asia.
Let's take a look at more news after this short break. Welcome back. A media gathering on the current situation in Sri Lanka after the recent unrest in a part of the Kandy district was held at the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau today. Speaking to the media, Minister of Tourism Development and Christian and Religious Affairs Jovan Amaratunga noted that the state of emergency, which was imposed purely as a precaution to contain any untoward situation, has now been fully removed and there is no restrictions for tourists on visiting any part of the country. He also requested the heads of missions of the countries to lift travel restrictions issued against Sri Lanka and assured the island is now safe for tourists.
Last couple of days or a couple of weeks, there have been a huge amount of publicity given that Sri Lanka is an unsafe place. Therefore, President of the country had to declare emergency in order to prevent any upheaval taking place in the country due to certain incidents that took place. Now the President of Sri Lanka has removed the emergency. Why? Because country has come back to normalcy. All places of tourist interest are now absolutely safe and motorable and accessible. So there is nothing to be sort of frightened or alarmed for any foreign individual to travel about in Sri Lanka. Another reason why we were worried is there are adverse travel advisories that went out to the different parts of the universe because Sri Lanka was considered a hotspot or a country with so much of tourist interest. Now it is therefore our duty to appeal to the diplomatic community. Since emergency has been revoked, country has returned to normalcy, therefore they should advise their countrymen not to fear, to come back once again, that Sri Lanka is quite normal and safe for any tourist who wishes to visit Sri Lanka.
The Health Promotion Bureau convened a media conference this morning to mark the International Tuberculosis Day, which falls on March 24. It is noted that Sri Lanka is considered a mid-burden TB country with 65 TB patients per 100,000 population.
This year, World Tuberculosis Day will be commemorated under the theme, Wanted, Leaders for a TB-Free World, You Can Make History, End TB. According to the Health Ministry's national program, 8,113 new cases of tuberculosis were identified in 2017, most of them reported from the Colombo district.
Still about over 8,000 patients are still detected annually in Sri Lanka, and we have about 400 to 500 deaths. So which is a significant amount, and we have to take responsibility to detect the cases and treat them early. The main symptoms of tuberculosis are that if you have a cough going on for more than 2 weeks, or if you're losing weight or you're losing appetite, or if you have a fever that is going on intermittently for more than 2 weeks, or if you're coughing out blood, then you may be having TB. So even if you think that this cough is very innocuous, but I think you should go and see a doctor and get yourself checked out. There are several places that you could go in Colombo. We have the Central Chest Clinic in Colombo, which is located in Boralla in the MRI premises. But other than that, all the central dispensaries attached to the Colombo Municipal Council, then the Colombo South Teaching Hospital, the Homagamo Hospital, Mulleriava Hospital, all these places, Avisavella Hospital, they are equipped to check out and help you to see whether you have TB. It's easy to diagnose TB. You only have to check your sputum or take an X-ray, and then they will be able to tell you whether you have TB or not.
Let's take a look at stocks after this short break. Welcome back. Trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a negative note today. The all-share price index dropped by 31.13 points to close at 6,462.50, and the S&P SL20 dropped by 28.0 points to close at 3,641.46. The turnover was 286.7 million rupees and 9.2 million shares were traded. Up next is Forex rates. With that, we are wrapping up State of Business for the day. We'll meet you tomorrow at the same time with more latest news. Until then, take care. Good night.